Ah, thank you. Sorry about that. There's probably a way to, um,
She's fine.
fix the volume. So anyway, I'm pleased to be able to, introduce Randy Person, um, who will talk about mason bees. Randy, would you care to give, tell us about your background and how long you've been doing this? And I may end up moving that table closer for right now.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Just smuggle it up. Is that okay for you? Okay.
Okay. And you realize that, Samir, you can't read the sign on the front of that Randy has there because it's somehow the image is mirrored, it's reversed, so you can't read it, but I'll show that to you at the end. Yeah, Randy, take it away.
Okay, good evening. Well, once again, my name is Randy Person. I have been raising mason bees commercially for somewhat over 25 years. Tying in with what Tamir said just recently, we are the fortunate caretakers of a legacy cherry tree. The gentleman, Mr. Broyles, who did the Broyles subdivision that we are part of, had a cherry orchard. And one of his trees still survives in our yard, and we're guessing it's somewhere around 100 years old. And it still produces really nice, big, dark red cherries on those 2 days between rainstorms. Which, typically happens around here. That's when the thing would flower. And we were there for 5 years and never got any cherries. And then I heard about mason bees. So I tried them, and by George, next year we actually got cherries. And I had drilled holes in a block of wood, and the mason bees had plugged them up. And then I didn't have the slightest idea what to do. So I spent several years, like many people who get started with mason bees, fumbling around, came up with an interesting idea that I published in conjunction with the Washington State farm people, and had good fortune enough to have that seen by a wonderful lady named Marguerite Dogterom, who has her doctorate in mason bees and was running a business on them out of Canada. In order to provide for her American customers, she needed mason bees raised in Washington, on the other side of the border. And so she contacted me, we got together, and I learned more from her in the first hour than I had in the last 3 years, and our relationship grew from there. For many years, I wholesaled to her company, which is called Be Diverse. And that worked for a while until COVID came along and she could no longer come across the border and use her little rental shop in Blaine as a place to work, because you just didn't go back and forth across the border. Shortly after that, unfortunately, she passed away. But I have raised lots of mason bees successfully. When I was at my peak, I was probably sending her 10,000 a year and distributing a fair number more around our area. So I think you can believe me when I talk about mason bees. Deb was able to find a way to get a PowerPoint show that I had done some years ago loaded for us. I also have a bunch of real stuff in front of me and off to the side. And I know that those of you out in Zoom land can't possibly see all that well. So what I'm going to do is run through my script and very smoothly bypass those parts that will be better covered in the show because we'll be able to see them nicely. And then at the end, because I will always forget something, we'll be open to questions. So, for those of you who don't know, what in the world is a mason bee? Well, a mason bee is a small bee and it's a solitary bee. When most people think of bees, they think of beehives and honey and stuff like that. But mason bees are one of the thousands and thousands of solitary bees. I have a few of them here. You in the room can kind of see. They are an iridescent blue-black in the sunshine. And one of their other common names is blue orchard bee because of the way they look. What's good about them is, among other things, they have a really convenient life cycle. You don't have to care for them constantly like you do hive bees. They have an annual life cycle. Right now, starting a couple weeks ago here in the South Puget Sound area, the males started coming out. A few days after that, the females started coming out, and my backyard has been orgy city for the last few nice warm days. Most of them have now hatched, and the females are impregnated, and they're going about their business of gathering pollen, which is one of the reasons these are such good pollinators, because honeybees go primarily for nectar. And when they go back, they'll have a little pollen attached to their legs. Mason bees gather pollen because that's the food for their offspring. They only need enough nectar to stick it together into a ball. So they're diving deep. They're coming home covered with pollen, and they are creating a pollen ball that's about half the size of your little fingernail and stuffing it in the end of a long hole that they use for a nest. They finish that, plant one egg on it, pull back a little bit, and then build a wall out of mud, which is why they're called mason bees. That's now the back of the hole, and they do it again. So in an average hole that has a length of about 6 inches, like this, we'll talk about a little bit later. This is one way of providing holes for them. You can get probably 10 bees or 10 eggs laid. You may or may not get 10 adult bees out of it, and we'll talk about that. Once she seals that up, she does that for about 6 weeks. That's her lifespan once she gets going. She's done, and you're done. All you have to do is let that egg develop, and maybe about June or so, you may want to take a block that looks like this, that hopefully will have the fronts of the holes plugged with mud, because the last thing she does is she plugs the hole nicely. You might want to pull that out carefully and turn it around because the back is sealed off, and have that point out, because flickers and other woodpeckers know what a sealed off hole is. It's a restaurant. And they will come along and grab a couple out of each one if you leave them pointing out well into fall. But they won't mess with them in the summer. They'd rather have their meal grow big and fat and pick them up in the fall. Nature is wonderful. By September, everything's done. You have an adult bee in there. You disassemble your choice of nest material, clean the cocoons, and then they are ready to put back out. Now, this is where a lot of the books, including Marguerite's, and I differ a bit. I do not put mine in the refrigerator. A lot of people say, clean them up and you put them in the fridge. Of course, don't put them in a modern fridge because a modern fridge is frost-free and it sucks the moisture out of things, so it will dehydrate them. So if you're going to put them in your modern refrigerator, you should buy our Mason Bee Hydrator, which looks an awful lot like the clamshell that you get vegetables in at the store with a little sponge and a box to drop your cocoons in. And you carefully keep them hydrated. And then as spring approaches, you're supposed to know when your flowers are going to bloom, how long it's going to take the bees to warm up when you put them outside, get the bees out in time to match the flowers. And I said, the heck with that. Once they're clean, they go outside. And the ones that I keep for myself go right into their release boxes and they're ready to go. They get all the same signals that my plants in the yard do. I think we all agree that we're having a really early spring. The plants are early. The bees know it. The bees came out about the same time as the plants that we grow for them do. And so if they're outside, they're just working with nature. The only time I put some in the fridge is about a month ago when it's starting to warm up where I have them stored and I'm keeping them for later or I'm keeping them for sale and I don't want them to be hatching out. Then I'll put them in the fridge. So that's one of the reasons mason bees are so good for your yard. They come out early, they fly when it's cold, they're easy to take care of, and they pollinate the heck out of things. I have heard that an apple tree might take 100 honeybees to pollinate it, and yet 5 mason bees would do the same job. And having seen what they can produce, I'd go along with that. Their needs are very simple. They need a hole that's the right diameter, which is about 5/16 of an inch. It has to be the right length. And this is important. I have a 4x4 here with holes drilled in it that don't go quite all the way. And for those of you who can read this, it says on the top, bad example. Because, first of all, you can't open this up and clean them. But even more importantly, the female mason bee can control the gender of her offspring. She will always start with females toward the back of the hole. After she gets toward the front, the last 4 or 5 will be males. Well, if you've got a hole that's less than that long, and you're looking at 4 or 5 half-inch deep cells with males, you have almost no room for females. Sometimes you don't have room for any. And of course, it's the females that do most of the pollinating work because they're the ones gathering, making the ball to lay the egg. So you need the length. 5.5 to 7 inches works. 6 inches is really common. And if you're going to buy anything pre-made, 6 inches is a really good bet. So if you've got the right size hole, the right depth, and you can take it apart to clean it, you've got what you really, really need to take care of the mason bees. There's several different kinds of nests. You can get different variations of a board with grooves in it. This one happens to have the grooves cut full depth on one side, and some of them have a half a circle on both the top and the bottom. But the bottom line is that you put them together, and when you stack them up, you have holes. And in the fall, you cut the tape that's holding them together, and you take them apart. And you can get to the mason bees and you can get the cocoons out and clean them. Another way of doing it is in tubes or straws. You can buy them pre-made, glued up cardboard, or you can make your own. I happen to have a design that I'm making available to you folks tonight. And it basically consists of a block with holes drilled all the way through. And then you cut your own paper. And the paper is special. It is cooking parchment. I've tested a number of different kinds of paper, and this works best. And then in order to make your tubes, you simply roll a sheet of that paper around a dowel that's a little bit smaller than the hole. And when it's nice and tight, you can slip it into the hole. When you let go, it expands to fill the hole. This slips out very easily. You do that a whole bunch more times. They're sticking out the back. In the back, you pinch it, bend it over. And then when they're all bent over, you take the back, which you screw onto it, and that holds them complete. Now you've got your own lined blocks. You didn't have to pay 6 or 10 or 15 cents a tube for them. And the tubes aren't glued. In the fall, you don't have to carefully cut them open and cut the tubes, but not the cocoons. You don't have to try to tear them apart in a spiral. You simply pull the tail, they come out. Remember, it's not glued, but it's been rolled up for months. It's not going to go anywhere. It's going to stay that way. But all you have to do then is find that edge, unroll it like that, and brush your cocoons into the wash basin. It's really fast. It's really easy. And I don't know why, but pests, we're going to talk about pests in a few minutes, don't seem to like the parchment. You get a better ratio of good adult bees using this than by using just the wood trays. Once again, I don't know why, I just report. We're going to see some pictures of all those pests when we do the slideshow. So I'm going to go by those a bit and just show you quickly how easy it is to take care of these. You have to have, of course, someplace to put your blocks. And you don't have to be much of a carpenter. At my house, I have just made boxes. And the boxes will fit, several of the nest blocks. And so if you're going to get into mason bees, first pick your nest block. There's different kinds, different sizes, and then just build a little box around it. And then this box needs a bit of an overhang so that you don't get driving rain into it. The bees love to warm up in the morning. So east facing is wonderful. South facing is okay. West and north is, they're going to get up one of these days. But the sooner they get up, the sooner they start working for you, and they'll fly until sunset. So all mine face east, and they get that first rain. Now, the one thing I'm going to show tonight that I have not yet published is that there is a parasitic wasp, and we're going to see some pictures of him, that gets into the bees and is probably the second most prolific pest that I have, short of the pollen mites. Somewhere I read that the wasps work by hovering. That they hang around out here and just float around, watch the lady go in, watch her come back out, and then she comes back out and they go in. And I thought, oh, what would happen if the wasp couldn't see that? So I fiddled around and I built my anti-wasp barrier. It looks an awful lot like a block of wood with a couple of slots cut in. And if you put that in front of your nest blocks, it does cut down the number of pests. It also means in the fall, or actually in midsummer, you do not have to pull the blocks out and turn them around because the flickers can't get in. All you have to do when you build this box that holds those blocks is leave about an extra inch of space for them to move around so that they can come through the slot, walk around, find a hole they like, and use it. That works so well that this year I did not put any boxes like this out that aren't protected. Because I don't get nearly as many from those. It really makes a difference. So that's a hot tip that someday I'm going to publish. I keep saying I got to write that up, but I haven't. For those of you that have them more than a year or two and you get a doubling of your population every year or so, which you should, you're going to eventually need some place to put all your nicely washed cocoons. More crude carpentry. You just put together a little box with a lid and one hole the size of the hole that they like. That box will hold a couple hundred cocoons. You just dump them in, make sure they're good and dry so they don't mold. And then you put the lid on, and that's what goes out hopefully in December or January when I'm all done taking care of the washing and handling. If you make that box the same size as your nest material, you're modular. Everything's interchangeable. So you can go, nest, 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 release box, nest, nest. Those are most of the basics. Let's do the slideshow and we'll run through that. You'll see some pictures more easily than what I've got up here. So Deb is going to run them on me. You'll hear me say click from time to time. So. Oh, that's pretty. Aha. Okay, click. All right, that's just a couple of the mason bees on the west side, on the east side of our yard catching the westerly sun. And they're probably both females. I don't think I said this, the females, like in raptors, are much larger than the males. Plus, the males have mustaches, and you can see it. And you can look at these I have up here and take a look. So click. That's a lady who is heading over to finish packing one of the cells. Click. And there she is. That's my mascot. That's what's on my business card. She's just going to town. Okay, click. That is an excellent example of what not to do. As you can see, that is a commercial block. You can still buy those. We talked about why you don't want to, so go ahead and click. And you'll see that note and then click again. Let's see if I remember this well. There we go. That tells you about the length, and we already talked about the female controlling her gender. And the proper length hole encourages a good male to female ratio. So click. One of the papers I experimented with, but don't use for a number of reasons, it's just wax paper. What was cool about it is you can see right through it. So if you look at the, say, 1, 2, 3, fourth one down, the open end is on the left and the back of the cell is on the right. And notice that there's maybe 5 fairly large cells on the right, and then a couple that are sort of intermediate, and the last ones on the left are definitely smaller. Those on the left near the entrance are male. Those on the right at the back are female. And the males always come out first. It takes them a couple days to get mature. And then the females come out and the guys are hanging around and the poor ladies don't stand a chance. So you can click again. And we're going to, now I've told you things you're supposed to do, but it always helps me to understand why in the world am I doing that? So go ahead and click. If you take one of these nice, neat, clean blocks, like I showed you earlier, and open them up in the fall, this is what they actually look like. Being an insect is a rough time. Click again. And yes, okay, so that circle is drawn around some nice mason bee cocoons. They're dirty, there's mud, there's bee poop on them, but those are good cocoons. They will clean up well. Click again. Oh, okay, nice mason bee cocoons. I agree with myself, good. There's a couple of larvae that passed away. We don't know why. Those are just dead and dried. We need to get rid of those. And click again. That's another kind of bee. I'm not actually sure what that is, but they came in later. They're not nearly developed enough to do anything with in the early fall, and they simply have to be disposed of. Click again. Okay, one more time. That is, you can click once again, and I think we'll get a label up. Yes. Those are leafcutter bees. They are a summer bee, which works out really nicely because if you don't have all your holes filled, the leafcutters will come in and use them, doing no harm to the mason bees. They make their nests or their cells out of little bits of leaf that they cut and drag in there. And depending on the different variety that they get, those things just look like a beautiful braid when you open them up. I always just take those out, toss them into a yogurt container and leave them sitting somewhere in the yard protected so they can come out the next summer. They are also a solitary bee that is a useful pollinator. So, next time. Okay, click once or twice. Let's see, we do once, do one more time. Okay, the most common pests are pollen mites. When you open your block up and you see a cell that looks like it's got yellow sand in it, those are mites. Some of it's mite poop from having eaten the pollen, but in each one of those circled cells, there's hundreds and hundreds of mites. Now, let's take a look at about the third row down from the top. The open end is to the right. You can see that it's still plugged. I haven't pulled the plug off. And the back end, which was protected with a piece of cardboard, is on the left. So that first bee that you see toward the right has got a pretty easy way out. The next one that's between those two circles is going to have to crawl out through hundreds of mites. The three big, beautiful female bees toward the left end are going to have to crawl out through two cells full of mites. They're going to leave, hopefully with few enough mites on them, they can actually fly. They've been known to come out so covered that they couldn't even stay airborne. But they're going to go to the nice new nest material that you've given them for this season and drag in a bunch of pollen mites who are going to jump off, think they've been granted a marvelous new home, and get ready for her to start bringing them food. So let's look at a few more things that can get in there. Click. Parasitic wasps, I mentioned them. The number 5 there is a cocoon that had the parasitic wasp larvae in it. And you can see that there are a number of individual larvae in there. Each of those is going to turn into a wasp. And so each one of those can do to other cocoons what their parent did to this one. So let's click again. They're small. Those are the wasps on the outside of one of these grooved boards. And it happens that this year I used clear packing tape to put my boards together, and that made great wasp paper. So as they crawled out and crawled around, they got stuck on the paper and got a great picture of them. So those are dead parasitic wasps, but that's what they look like. And those are the ones that I invented my anti-wasp barrier to prevent from getting in, that supposedly hover and watch. But that's one of the pests. So go ahead and click. Those are carpet beetle larvae. Carpet beetles do fly and find their eggs in places other than carpets. And if you click again, you can see that they can drill right into the cocoon. And let's see what happens next. They will eat all the good parts and they will leave the chitin behind. They will so delicately, totally disassemble a perfectly good live adult mason bee. So there's something that you want to get rid of. Okay. And I'm not sure, I just call those guys fast worms because when you open them up, they crawl out and head for parts unknown. But they get picked up with the tweezers and dropped in the soapy water, which by the way is the best insecticide going. If you don't know that already, if you got a bee's nest or an ant swarm or something, just put some Dawn or something ivory, something evil like that in some warm water in a sprayer and you'll kill them dead. The reason is that insects breathe through pores in their skin and the soap clogs the pores and they suffocate almost instantly. It also, if you're attacking a yellow jacket nest, wets their wings and they can't fly. Whereas when you hit them with a bee bopper spray, that just makes them angry. And you better not be close until they finally drop dead. So soapy water is a trick that Ortho does not want you to know about. Okay, clicker. All right, so I think we've seen at least 4 different reasons now to pick some method of being able to clean your nest. That's what mine look at harvest time. Those happen to be a couple old plastic boxes that I used on the left. And then you see the wooden ones. So, you know, things are messy, but they clean up nice. So click. That's one of my, I call that a 6-pack, because it fits 6 of them. You can see you just pick your module, make a little box. That happens to be, I have kind of an open carport on the east. And so these are underneath. And that one had an anti-wasp barrier in front of it. I can easily tell because of that line of dirt along the bottom, because when they kick it out, it has no place to go. But the bees seem to really like the anti-wasp barrier. As you see, every one of those holes is plugged. The one next to it that didn't have a barrier front was probably 70 to 80% used. So there's a number of different good reasons to put an anti-wasp barrier on the front of the box that you use to hold your nest material. So clicker again, that's what I call a 4-pack, which is what I have here. And there's enough overhang on my garage that they can go under the eaves on the sides. So that's another place you can easily put them. And of course, they're completely out of the rain. That happens to be the south, but you know, the sun hits that fairly early and warms things up right through the roof, and they did fine there. And that one, you can see I've got one of the commercial blocks on the right, 2 of my line blocks in the middle, and a release box on the left. All able to fit, and you can see the guy in back has 4 of the commercial blocks. So that's another way you can do it. This shows what happens when you don't protect them. The ones in the top row were unprotected, and it was on a neighbor's house, so I didn't get over there and put a ladder up and turn them around. And so Flicker's got a couple out of each of those holes. But remember what the lady did. She left a bunch of guys out at the end. And so the Flickers probably got a couple males. And nature says, big deal. We've still got 2 or 3 males in there. There's plenty to take care of the females that are left. And we've allowed for that. Nature is pretty darn smart sometimes. But if you turn them around, you'll have more males to deal with. So, here's how to make your own line blocks. Let's run through this real quick. I've also got that document here. And for those of you out there in Zoom land and anybody else that might have turned in, I understand that you're not gonna be able to pick up a handout. I want to make sure that you can get anything I'm handing out, and in a little while, I'm going to make a great deal for you guys. And I want you to be able to get that deal too. So when Deb puts my contact information up there, all you have to do is drop me a note, and I will send you copies of the handouts. And if you want the deal, I'll give you the deal. That's the deal. So as I described, you can see that we've got the block with the holes in it. That's my beautiful wife who's rolling a piece of parchment around a 1/4-inch rod that'll fit inside the 3/8 hole nicely. And then in the next slide, she's showing how you simply put them in. Next slide, you got them all in. They're all sticking out the back. You just have that flat down on a hard surface. You bend all the tails over, and then you fasten the back on, trim that last row, and you're all set. Next fall, you take the back off, you straighten the tails out, pull them out, And, I'll have to show you that, but this, I believe, is the last slide, and if you punch it one more time, you get a cute little closing. And I caught them right at sunrise when they were just warming up, and they kind of come out and say, yeah, is it warm enough yet? Am I warm enough yet? Yeah, so that's them. So that's the show. I have one more thing to show you. We talked about washing. And you literally wash them. And this is how complicated it is. I have the best plastic salad bowl, my 98 cents would get me at Goodwill. Of course, today it's probably $2.99. And I have a strainer that is carefully marked, so my wife knows that I have not stolen one from the kitchen. The strainer goes in the bowl, you fill it up to within about an inch of the top of the strainer, sitting in the laundry tray is the way I do it. Kitchen sink would work. As you get the cocoons out of either your trays or you unroll the paper, they go right in the water. They are absolutely and completely waterproof. In nature, they often like to use broken reeds by a stream. You get a spring flood, snaps them off, carries them a few miles downstream. They wind up on the bank. They dry out, they come out, they're fine. So nature built them that way. And it's to our advantage that once you get a layer of them on here, you can turn the water on, start shaking this around so that the cocoons are rubbing against the side of the sieve. You are mechanically scrubbing off the mites and the dirt. And they're just kind of flowing over the edge and down the drain. The mites are so small, you don't even know there's holes here. They just go right through. And once you've got them well rinsed, you give them a little bit of a shake, dry them on paper towels or newspaper overnight, and then you handle them. Now, we haven't talked about that yet. That's a step a lot of people don't bother to go through. I have to if I want to be honest, because I'm selling cocoons and people don't want to pay for cocoons that are empty or full of pests. So I'm sorry I don't have a slide of that, but this picture here shows a camping flashlight standing up, one of those big 6-volt lantern things, covered with cocoons. And in the daylight, it just looks like a bunch of cocoons. And if you turn the room lights off and turn the flashlight on, you can see through the cocoons. And I can see empty ones. I can see ones that have
the whole thing closely.
yeah. Because they've seen all the others already.
I can't tell without.
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay, yeah, you talk.
You go look. Okay. So tell me whether we can see that at all. Is that working?
Got it?
Yeah.
Up or down? Okay. So the ones that are on the flashlight when the up,
Yes.
okay,
Move in, there you go.
all right. The ones that are on the flashlight when it's lit are either hollow, they probably had something bad in it that's gone out. You might have a dead larva in it. You might have a number of individual things in it, which is the clue that those are the larvae of the parasitic wasp. And they might have a nice, normal looking adult bee. I don't put anything out for sale unless I have seen an adult bee in the cocoon. So I can guarantee you that's what you're getting. Now, why would you want to bother with this step? An empty one one with a dead larva is taking up a little space. It's not really hurting you much. The ones that have the parasitic wasp larvae in it contain a pest that can go through several generations in one summer. You want to get rid of those if you can. It is worth it to take the time to take a look into your cocoons and toss the ones that are evil and make sure you're keeping the good ones. And I'm very nasty about this. I always throw, if I don't understand what it is, I toss it. I often get cocoons that are too dark to tell. I keep those because experience has shown that 95% of them are going to be good. And I put those out at my house. I save the good ones for the customers. Okay, so let's see. I think I'm going to finish up with such a deal I got for you. As you might have expected, I have some cocoons for sale right now. And I had a good year last year, and I've had a not very good response this year. The bees should be out, and I've still got some. So if anybody in the Tree Fruit Society would like some, I normally sell them for a batch of 50 for 25 bucks. And if you go online, you can easily find a batch of 20 for $35. I sell mine basically at wholesale. But I want to see the bees out, and I'm willing to give anybody that wants a set of 50 for a flat 20 bucks tonight. And that goes for the folks that are watching on Zoom. If you contact me and say you want some bees, just tell me that you're part of the society and you heard about it this way, and I'll give them to you for 20 bucks. So I have those with me in the cooler. I think that's everything I had, except that one of the handouts, and remember, you out in Zoom land, simply send me a note and I'll send you this stuff. This is a handout that I give to all my customers, and it covers the most basics. It tells you how long you need your holes to be, that you need to clean them. It gives you the information about this book, which is, I think, out of print, but very easy to find in the used bookstore online. So, and you also have a link to my directions for making the nest box, which tonight you guys can pick up, but you can also print more from online if you want to, or you can always just send me a note and ask. So I encourage you to grab one of these little guys if you think you might want to make some of your blocks, and Jerry has done it. Is it difficult? No. Okay, there's your testimony.
I'm putting out about 20 of them this year.
All right.
Wow.
So I am open for questions.
On your wasp preventer door, are you putting it on right away or are you just waiting a bit?
Yes,
On your cover?
as soon as you get everything set up, it goes on.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can't watch them fill them up then.
Well, you'll know, this is actually my very first one where I tried a vertical and slanty. I make all mine slanty at 30 degrees because I'm a draftsman and I have a 30-60 triangle, and that's easy. And I like the look of it. And if I put like 4 or 6 in one of these, and I put that slit right there between two of them, you can actually see through the slot And you'll be able to look at both boxes and see kind of how they're doing. But yeah, you won't get to count all, and you could, well, no, you couldn't. If you waited until you saw them all fill up, this would keep the flickers out, but it wouldn't take care of the wasp
Right.
issue. So you need them there while they're actually working on
I'll put them on tomorrow.
it. Okay,
So you haven't had any moisture related issues with having the cover on it since it's underneath the eaves? Just 'cause
no,
they're moist.
there's of course plenty of ventilation there.
Yeah, okay.
The moisture issues, since you bring them up, came as I tried different papers. Some people say, hey, that's just about the size of the great big Slurpee straw. I'll just cut those plastic straws. Plastic straws are going to trap all the moisture in there, and your poor bees are gonna mold. And that's a bad thing. I tried butcher paper. Butcher paper is plastic coated. And it did the same thing. And shopping bags, because I want something really tough, you know, because I'm manly and I want to do that. They actually will absorb moisture out of the air. For some reason, the cooking parchment is able to breathe enough, but it keeps stuff out, and the parasitic wasp and even the fast worms appear to not like it because I get fewer of them. So from a given hole, I'll get 20% more out of that than I will from that. And when you're doing thousands, that makes a difference. Yeah.
Do you, so you mentioned cleaning the cocoons, but in terms of the boxes themselves, you just like a stiff
yeah.
brush, like brush out where they were, and do you do that if you have the parchment paper, or do you not need to?
Okay, with the parchment paper, you pull them out and there's very little debris left. I've got an air compressor, I just go and get the rest of it off. These guys, yeah, they're gonna be muddy. Now, here's my other secret. When the cocoons are kind of glued down in here, I asked Marguerite when she first showed me this, well, how do you get them out? She said, well, I make a coffee cake. And I invite my friends over. And we take our coffee stir sticks and we sit there and we go pink, pink, pink. No, it's gotta be a better way than that. So I invented something that I cleverly call a bee scoop. And if it looks a lot like a Phillips screwdriver with the end ground off, that's the way they started. I'm now building them custom with my own handles and spring steel. But that nice little end is designed so that when you slip it under the first cocoon, you can literally go that fast and it just lifts them up. They drop in, and in about that much time, you're clean block. And then there's still a bunch of crud left in it. So you go over and you scrape it out best you can. And even though this is spring steel with our really, really sandy soil, I mean, that's the definition of sharpening. And so I have a couple of these that are pretty worn, and you would be too after 50,000 slots.
Yeah.
So basically, when you've done that, you still have to clean them and you with hot water and a scrub brush. You don't need soap. Contrary to many people's opinion, you don't need bleach. You just need to get the dirt out of there. And you'll have little lumps sometimes, little tiny lumps of really hard stuff that might be hardened sap or occasionally, I know there's a pine tree in the neighborhood. Cause now and then one of my bees will find it and they'll bring back pine resin to build their walls with. And boy, you know, when you hit that stuff. But it's inert. They don't care, they'll climb over it. So with a scrub brush and hot water, you get anything that's left, it's not gonna do any harm. And you washed any last remaining mites down the drain. And then I do a few at a time because I want to let them absorb as little water as possible so they dry as quickly as possible. And you leave them out to air dry. Don't put them away at all damp. I can tell you the color of the mold. So, you know, give them an extra day or two. And then you just reassemble them and get them ready to go.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Mayor, any questions for you on that end?
So if someone buys cocoons from you, like what is needed right off the bat? Because those are like ready to be released, kind of is the idea. Would how long? Like I don't have a little whole house for them yet. How long would I have in order for like would that be just building that by the fall?
No, you'll need something soon, but if you were to put them out tomorrow, it would, if the weather continues the way it's been, it would probably take a couple of days for some of the males to warm up and start hatching. And the females will be a little bit behind that. So you would have at least 3 to 5 days, I would say, before in which you could go to your local favorite nursery, who I assure you is going to be selling these blocks, and you could get one. And by the way, we didn't talk about how many you need. The bees that you get, the cocoons you get are typically about half and half, male and female. And I usually figure one female will fill one hole. So if you get a unit of 50 from me, you'll have 25 females, and you would want a block that had at least 25 holes. I like to provide more holes than I need. I'd rather my ladies all had a place to be than see all the holes filled and wonder what happened to the rest of them who couldn't find a place to live. So the other thing you could do is you could just get the cocoons. You could put them in a stable place where they're out of direct rain and open them up to release them and let them go out in the yard and let them find a place. And, they'll find a hole that a beetle had drilled in a rotten log. They'll find the 1/4-inch gap between 2 cedar shingles and use it and not do any harm to your house. They'll find a place in among the rocks. They'll find the recessed heads of screws on your lawn power equipment. I can assure you that. And if you have any outlets in your garage, you better make sure they're covered because the ground outlet is just the right size to plug in. So mine all have child safety caps. But yes, if you got cocoons like tomorrow or before the weekend and put them out, you'd have a few days in which to get some nest material, and you just put it conveniently near where you release them. And after they come out, they grab a bite and they look for a place to live. And you've given them an apartment right next door and they love it.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I two questions, Randy.
Yes.
One is, if I can remember them. Yes, there are two, if I can remember even one of them. Do you recommend putting out a certain kind of, clay or, mud mixture for them?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Yeah, the places like Crown Bees and other guys will happily sell you a little bag of dry mud, right? Okay, I've got probably the sandiest soil around. I made a mistake one year. We had a blueberry bush. I put a hose under it, left it running, came back a half an hour later, there was no puddle. That's how sandy my soil is. My bees don't have a problem at all. If it's getting a little bit dry, I go out in the morning and I hand water a flower bed nearby so that the earth is somewhat damp. You don't need to waste money on that. They don't use clay. I mean, when I've cleaned a dozen blocks with this guy is sitting up about there because it's sitting on the pile of sand that's in the bottom of this. And, you know, I'm sorry. I'm sure their heart's in the right place. I know Dave does a good job up at Crown Bees, but I think, clay is a scam.
Mhm.
If you got damp dirt, you're in good shape.
Thank you.
And you said you had two. Did you find the other one?
No, I lost it.
Yeah, that happens.
I'll contact you then.
You can always drop me a note and I'll be happy to take care of it.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Gosh. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Really, well, thank you. Thank you. very
You're
much.
welcome.
And if we can make maybe those, you have files of those, I would assume, so
And you've seen
we can.
these, this, those, yeah, you've seen all these on the
Okay.
show.
Okay.
So the only one you haven't seen is the candling.
Mhm.
And obviously I have to update it, but I'm busy, so I probably won't
Okay.
for a while.
Well, thank you, Randy. Yeah,
Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah.